PowerPoints, Keynotes, slide decks, Prezi presentations. These are all things that you absolutely need every single time you present. Or do you? Well, according to a lot of people and books that I've heard and read, you must first decide if you actually need a visual aid, because if you don't, and a lot of times you don't, then don't use one. In my experience, when used well, visual aids almost always are helpful. I don't know if this is because of some element of human nature. I was just watching my baby earlier this morning. She's about 1.5 years, so maybe a toddler now, but walking around adorning herself with various necklaces and wanting to look in the mirror and saying, check me out. Human beings do this without being taught. Other primates do this as well, some type of adornment. I don't know if visual aids are an element of human adornment, a desire for this kind of thing. But I've got 6 principles based in human nature that will have broad appeal throughout various cultures and contexts. So you can decide for yourself, do I need a visual aid? Do I want a visual aid? Will it be helpful for my audience? How do I use them? Let's find out. As I mentioned, I have some rules for you, 6 rules or principles that are based in human nature, so they will have broad appeal, not just for in-person presentations, but also online, because you are still dealing with human beings. So let's jump into it. But before we do, please note that you must make a connection very early on, and this is probably the best way to do that. If you start with a slide deck with you in a little bitty corner or in the back of the room, you are relinquishing yourself from responsibility, from being in control. And we'll get to that very soon here, but let me first throw this at you. Here are 6 principles, rules we're going to talk about. First, you are the presentation. Second, 1 message per slide. Third, avoid talking to the visual aid. Fourth, big, bold, simple. Fifth, remove the visual when not in use. And 6th, always be prepared to do this thing without the visual, because stuff happens. If you want to throw all of this up at once, that's okay, to let people know where you're headed or maybe the gravity of the situation that you're describing. But once you want to get into one specific point, don't leave the whole thing up. Highlight that point for us. Point it out. Make it simple for us to follow along. Let us know where we are. That feels comforting for an audience. Let's take a look at this first one. This is a television show that a student turned me on to, and it took a few episodes for me to get into it, but then it was kind of catchy. Anyway, it has absolutely nothing to do with the slides, but you should know that you are the presentation. You can think of this like a circus. You ever been to the circus? Maybe you don't need to go to the circus. I know that a lot of people aren't going to the circus anymore. Lots of problems with the circus. Things change. But if you were to go to the circus or take a look at the box of animal crackers, you will notice that there are lions, tigers, bears, and a ringleader. That's you. You are the ringleader. Don't forget it. Without the ringleader, the circus is just a jungle. And nobody wants to be in the jungle without a guide. You are the audience's guide. Don't hide in a little box on the screen or hide in the corner. A lot of times I see, especially in person, somebody's got a PowerPoint, they're really excited about it. Oh, thank goodness. I don't really have to present. I just turn on my PowerPoint and I press the button in the corner. Don't do this. Don't do this. You are the presentation. Don't let us forget it. On to principle/rule 2. Rule number 2, 1 message per slide. Probably could have put that as rule 1, seems to make more sense. 1 message per slide, rule 1, but rule 1 is like the most important one. So, rule 2, 1 message per slide. Anything more can get confusing. Remember that in the audience, as audiences, we are lazy and we are selfish. It's perfectly okay to be both. Lazy, we didn't come here to work, we came to watch you work. Selfish, I want to know what's in it for me. And if there's all kinds of stuff out here, I don't know what to make of it. And it's more work than I want to put in. Make things simple for us. One slide, one message. Cool. Here's an example of a print ad, and if you were to put this on brochure, it'd work perfectly fine because some is above the fold and some is below the fold. But if you try to cram all this information onto a single slide, elements of this visual are going to draw us in different directions, and you will lose control over what we are supposed to be looking at and what you don't want us to see. We'll come back to this in a later video. Out of every kind of visual I see, this is the one I see most often. These QBRs, quarterly business reviews, quarterly business reports, and apparently they all have the same template. I don't know where they find it, but here it is. And you've got this big, bold, fiscal year 2019 Q2 territory forecast. Is that the most important thing on the slide? Is that why it's the biggest and the boldest, because we forgot what year we're looking at or what quarter we're dealing with? No. If it's not the most important thing on the slide, why is it the biggest and the boldest? Think about that. It shouldn't be. And I've got a yellow bar across here and a yellow bar across there. Why? Don't know. That's what came with the theme, so I ran with it. I got a vague, meaningless summary above here, some strengths, some weaknesses. I'm going to throw a chart up. I'm going to throw a graph down there. And the worst part about it all is this little thing in the corner. You know how that feels when you do that to somebody? 3 of 143 feels like this. Why would you do that to somebody? The only thing worse than that is having a time at the bottom. Tick, tick, tick. You want this presentation environment to be just like a casino. No sense of time, no sense of day or night. We're here for the long haul and we're happy about it. If I see the time, I know how long till lunch. And I know what I'm going to do after lunch. And if I don't, I'm going to spend this time thinking about it instead of listening to you. Don't show us that. When you have all this information, break it up for us. Make it simple. Make it easy. Highlight one section at a time. Let us see it visually. That's what the visual aid is supposed to do. You're saying words, lots of them. We don't have to see the words as well, all of them. We don't want to see all of them. Little bit of text, beautiful image. Make it simple. One thing at a time. This is an actual slide from the war in Afghanistan. Not saying that the war in Afghanistan went badly because of this PowerPoint, but it probably didn't help. If you want to show us that something is a total cluster mess, or that it's very intricate, complex, show us something like this. Let us have it. Wow! Then highlight one aspect at a time. Relieve this distress. Okay. One thing at a time. This I can handle. Sometimes I try things out, like this. Didn't go well in class. I thought it was clever. Nobody else did. Bullet points. Anyway, you can introduce bullet points individually to maintain and control people's attention. You can also use the principle of contrast to highlight different bullets. I don't want you up here at this top bullet. I want you down at the bottom, so I control your attention using contrast. On to rule 3. Don't talk to me. You see the best meteorologists in the world. You know what they all do? They have this screen behind them and then they... No, they don't. They maintain eye contact. You want to know why? Because this is where the connection is. Connection's not here. That thing ain't going to talk to you. It ain't going to listen to you either. We are, hopefully. Give us the attention. Don't turn all of your attention and keep it on the visual. If you need to turn occasionally, oh man, I'm totally lost. I need a reminder. Thank you for the reminder. Avoid this if you can. Sometimes you can't. You're human. Okay, great. Now attention back to us. Moving on. Rule 4. Big, bold, simple. You can cut through all the crap with something big, bold, and simple. Here's some juxtaposition for you of big, bold, and simple. Notice these elephants. You could use any of these and they might be fine. But the bigger, the bolder, will garner greater returns. Your placement matters, especially in the room. Think about walking into this room and giving the presentation. Where can you stand? Where can't you stand? If I stand over here, will this be projected on my face? Will it turn my face various colors as I go through each slide? Something to consider. Will my image be cut off at the top? Cut off at the bottom? How would I know unless I practiced in that room? You need to practice in the room. Make sure you use images with large files. You can refine this if you were looking in a Google Images search to refine to large images. This will help you when you put this up and blow it up onto the screen. It looks so great on my computer or my phone, but when I put it up on a huge 8x10 screen, for whatever reason, it looked really bad. And you might think that people can parse this out. They say, no, you're a great presenter. Yeah, your images suck, but the presentation was great. But they can't. They can't separate the two. You use crappy images and suddenly you're a crappy presenter. Fair, unfair, good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't matter. That's the way it is. So think about it. Also make sure that you have a logical choice in all of these. Don't just randomly scatter stuff because you can. One more thing on contrast and colors. Actually, several more things on contrast and colors. For the rest of your life, because you are human, you don't even have a choice about it. You're going to pay attention to four main things. Big objects, moving objects, contrast-rich objects, and signaling colors like red, yellow, orange. At some point in our history, these things were very important to pay attention to. And now they're built into the cake. We can't even not pay attention to them. Turn on the television sometime. You'll see this principle in action. Notice that slide? It may sound absurd to you that you can give a presentation with beautiful contrast or no contrast, and that it would make a difference. But I'll use an example to highlight this difference. I go onto a website. I'm looking for some type of medication to solve a problem that I have. And one company's website looks beautiful, and the other company's website looks bad. I'm not going to buy from that bad website, and I'm not going to put whatever they're selling into my body. Why? Because the website looked bad. Sound ridiculous? Maybe, but it's the truth. And I'm not alone. How your visuals look is a reflection of you and whatever it is you're selling. Ideas, products, services, yourself, doesn't matter. Little things like this make a big difference, so pay attention to them. Onward. Here's another example of contrast. In a bright room, you can't see this slide at all. Use contrast, and suddenly things pop out of nowhere that were always there. But using the principle of contrast, now you can see them. Yes, I cheated a little on that, but you get it. More on contrast and backgrounds. Check out the background on this slide. Is there ever a time for a bright white background? Yeah. But certain images will require additional contrast. Let me show you a comparison. Notice, let me show you a side-by-side comparison. Is there a difference? Does one pop off the screen more than the other? Do you know why that is? It's not a trick. It's a principle of human nature. Capitalize on it. Rule number 5. Cover, hide, remove the visual aid when it's not in use. Direct us to a visual when you want us to see it. Misfortune! And after it's served its purpose, remove it. Because it could become a distraction. Still spinning. It just started going backwards. Finally, rule 6. You always need to be prepared to give this presentation without the use of your visual aid. Because believe me, stuff is going to happen. Have a plan. The show must go on. To recap, rule 1, you are the presentation. Don't let this thing become a jungle. You are the ringleader. Don't get stuck in the corner. Don't get hid out into a little box on the Zoom. If you must be in a little box on the Zoom because you can't figure out another way to get out of there, then think about rule number 5. Take away that visual on occasion, usually in visual communications about every 3 minutes. I know, it's really short. bring it back to you, then back to the visual. Stay in control. Rule number 2, 1 message per slide. We're very limited to take in anything more than that. Rule 3, avoid talking to the visual. It looks not good. It's a great way to lose an audience. Rule 4, big, bold, and simple. Pay attention to contrast, signaling colors, what colors mean, what they don't. Use this to your advantage. Rule 5, cover, hide, remove that visual aid when not in use. If you are in person giving this presentation, usually your little clicker will have a button called a picture blank button. It'll have a square with a line through it. You can press that button and it will remove the visual. Turn it black and blank. So all the attention is back on you. Do this sometime. Direct us to a visual. Have us look at it. Explain it. And then, when you want the attention back to you, take it away from us. And watch those eyes go like this. Ah, the power. You can also do this manually using black blank slides in between slides. White blank slides are going to leave you in the dark. Black blank slides will allow you to stand anywhere in the room and help you to maintain control. And rule number 6, always be prepared to do this thing without the presentation, because sometimes life is going to throw you a curveball and you really don't want to strike out when the stakes are high. I also have 3 honorable mentions for things that you could consider and probably should, like the use of live, living visual aids, film, video, movie clips, and one more note on virtual communications. For this first one, you have seen presentations where animals are introduced and the thing goes badly. This is because animals, and human animals included, are unpredictable. And in order to run that show well, you really need to be prepared to adapt, to adjust on the fly. When you're drawing volunteers from the audience, be prepared for them to do the unexpected. When using video clips, movie clips, film, for a 4 to 6 minute speech for a short speech, if I had a 15-second video, I'd be pushing it. I'd be pushing it. Why? Rule number 1, I am the presentation. I am. It's not movie time. It's not turn the lights off, press the play button, sit back and relax. But that's the signal you'll send if you go longer than 15 seconds. That's somewhat of an arbitrary number, but get a feel for it. If it starts to feel like movie time, shorten it. And finally, virtual comms. The very first thing you want to do is make a connection, and if you start with that visual up, and you in a little bitty corner, square at the top, you won't have a shot in hell at making a connection or keeping people's attention throughout the rest of that presentation. Give them all of you first. Make that connection. Then show us something. Don't just leave that something up there. Bring it back to you and me. To reestablish that connection, usually every 3 or so minutes, or you'll lose us. Get out there and use those visuals. Dazzle me. Being dazzled is one of my favorite of all experiences. Bring it.